Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the BioFi Community of Practice. We're so happy to have you all here. If this is your first time or maybe 15th time, I'm not sure how many calls we've done. Um, I always just like to ground us in purpose. And so I put this in the chat, our purpose statement. And I am curious if anyone out there among these 35 participants would be up for reading that purpose out loud to ground us here together with what we're doing.
Need glasses to do it, but I would be happy to.
Great. Please go for it, Grace. It's in the
All
chat.
right. Yes, our purpose is to cultivate and support a community of practitioners who are designing, capitalizing, implementing, and evolving bioregional financing facilities through peer-to-peer learning and coordination.
Thank you so much, Grace. And so the context today may feel like a little bit of a stretch from that, talking about technology platform, but I think for us who've been using this platform for the BioFi community of practice, and so many of the bioregional organizers out there who've been experimenting with it and leveraging it, we've come to see how intimately connected these are and how critical the social and participatory processes of building community coherence are for implementing and capitalizing and evolving these BFFs. So before we get into some quick breakout rooms, just to get the creative juices flowing, get y'all meeting each other, and then turning it over to our wonderful guests from the Hylo community, I just wanted to give a quick update from the BioFi side of things. We just published what we're calling the BioFi Resource Garden. It's a section on our website that has a whole bunch of resources that perhaps we from the BioFi project team have published, or resources that we have curated from various partners in the space. We also have a section in there that has two-pagers from many of the partners we're working with, really outlining in detail what the work is that they're doing in the world and what they could offer to bioregional organizing teams who are trying to build these BFFs. So really encourage you to check that out. And also, we want this to be a living, co-created space. And so if you have key resources you think should definitely be on there, please reach out and let us know. We want to grow that garden. We want to tend that garden with you all. And probably some of you already have some resources that you may have created and are on there. So thank you. Before we transition, I would love to hear two shares from their breakout rooms. Did you hear anything that was particularly touching, whether that felt particularly challenging or particularly inspiring for how people move through a challenge? I'd love just to hear briefly from two people.
Governance is hard. Getting people to collaborate and communicate is tricky. That's our takeaway.
Amen. Hey, Claire.
Yeah, we talked about how important the connective tissue is, and that projects like need a champion. And then we had David Henke in the room, and the bioregional congresses have been going for almost 50 years, and this he is that connective tissue that's helped that. So it was really wonderful to have, just that juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thanks for being here, David. Right on. All right, over to you, Samantha.
Thank you, Tyler. All right, I'm going to set a bit of context for our discussion today before I introduce our two special guests. So I think most of us here are well aware of the need for bioregional organizing teams to get organized and to do so quite quickly. We're experiencing more disasters, more pollution, the federal government in the United States dismantling environmental protection programs every day, extractive interests continuing to put pressure on indigenous communities and the forests they steward in the Amazon, and the list goes on. And we believe that we need tools that are designed to serve place-based teams doing this urgent and important regenerative work, to engage in bioregional mapping, planning, permaculture blitzes, mutual aid programs ongoingly, and particularly in the wake of disasters, um, to develop project portfolios for bioregional financing facilities, and to provide ongoing input into capital allocation once a bioregional financing facility is set up. And the team at Hylo is building a platform, stewarding a platform that aims to do exactly this. And it's been the home Hylo has of the BioFi community of practice over the last 9 months, and we've loved it. Hylo was co-founded by one of my co-founders of the BioFi project, Edward West, who's here with us today, with a bold and beautiful vision that has never been more relevant. As the dominant social media platforms are increasingly aligning with authoritarianism and becoming data harvesting, profit maximizing machines of manipulation, we are very excited about investing energy and resources in a platform designed to serve place-based coordination for regenerative action, to get you off of the platform and into the analog world, regenerating life. And so today we are going to hear from Clare and Aaron about how they are doing exactly this, including how to get started as a bioregional organizing team on Hylo, the basic functionalities of Hylo. We'll talk about some of the more sophisticated applications and how bioregional organizing teams can form their own groups and start mapping projects, events, asks, offers, etc. So let me quickly introduce the amazing Clare and Aaron. Clare Politano Brodeur is a community organizer, permaculture designer, and technologist who is weaving technology and ecology to create a regenerative future and running experiments in bioregional coordination. Clare has spent over a decade at the forefront of using technology as a tool to build and mobilize communities to create positive change. She is a core steward of the Terran Collective. She builds systems and tools for a regenerative future. At Hylo, she leads partnerships, communications, and product development. She facilitates conversations with Hylo partners to co-design tech solutions to the challenges they face. She specializes in participatory governance and community stewardship, guiding numerous groups to grow communities that are equitable and impactful. And Clare played a critical role in setting up our BioFi community of practice when it began. Aaron is her partner in life and in Hylo. He is a multidisciplinary designer, developer, and entrepreneur. He is the head of the design team at the Terran Collective. He brings vibrant and delightful apps, sites, and products to life, including, I will say, the BioFi project brand and website. If you've had a look at our website, that's Aaron's brilliance there. And some of his favorite things to work on are user experiences and interfaces, but he has a broad and deep range of skills across the design spectrum. And with that, I hand it over to Clare and Aaron to tell us more about Hylo.
Wow. Thank you, Sam. It's so lovely to be here today with all of you. Just an honor. And we're excited to share about why we're working on this, our own bioregional organizing, what Hylo is and what it's all about and how it's different, and really getting into how you can be using it in your local work. So Aaron's going to kick us off with a little story.
Yeah, poke me if I talk too long.
Okay.
Wow. It's been a long road to get here, and we started on the ground together. But when we met in 2018 and 2019, we were doing bioregional organizing right before COVID, building a movement, building energy in the Bay Area, inviting all the leaders in. And we reached this peak like just a couple months before COVID, and hosted an event called Conspiracy, where we gathered all of the leaders from that we knew in the Bay. Um, and we had this whole vision, and it went really well, a 4-day event. And by day 3, we weren't working on technology at all at this point, even though career-wise, that's where we all came from. And by day 3, everyone's like, we need tools. We need tools. And at that point, I think all of us in the group were like not ready to jump right back into a software project. Tibet and I, many of you know Tibet, had been working together for over a decade. We'd built a large successful solar company, and we're like, how do we use what we learned building technology to serve the world? And so we'd like switch directions, and then we met with everyone. They're like, please build us tech. And that's kind of how we all ended up working on this together, is that we heard from the community that we wanted to serve and empower that what they needed were tools that didn't exist yet. And that's what led us to talk with Ed. Hylo was going through a transition at that point where Hylo, which up until that point had been venture backed, it was had served the same community in many different ways, but had gone through ups and downs and needed to find a new home. And so it was sold to a company called HoloChain, and the team was absorbed into HoloChain, but the software itself didn't have a home. And at that time, we were sort of thinking along the lines of, everything's kind of needs a new home in this world. Everything needs care. Everything needs a steward. And so we saw a huge opportunity to save time, energy, and money, years of development time, building infrastructure could be saved by adopting Hylo. And so as a team, we decided to become stewards of a nonprofit platform, which we all come from for-profit, venture-backed, that whole world. And so in the process of switching directions and trying a new thing, we had to learn a whole lot of new things. And maybe you could share a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. I think part of the impetus as well, coming from Terran Conspiracy, was that there was so much amazing energy gathered when we all got together in person on beautiful land outside of San Francisco for 3 days. And it was, I was like 170 local regenerative leaders, so people that really wanted to organize. And after that, it was like, okay, how are we going to keep organizing when we're not in person together? And then COVID happened, so we couldn't keep having the local meetups that we had been hosting. So that made it particularly acute to have these tools. And these kinds of things are going to keep happening. Like everyone here knows the power of gathering in person, in place with our people. But we can't always be together in person, unfortunately. And then at the scale of the bioregion, we're close, but we're not always together in person. And then all kinds of crazy, unpredictable things can happen. So having a technology infrastructure that can meet those gaps and help us keep moving forward, it just became so obvious how critical that was. And because of the circumstances Aaron was sharing, it just kind of came together for us to take on Hylo at that time and try to make that into this tool that could really serve place-based and regenerative organizing. So that's how we dove in. And just to say a few words about what is Hylo today, and then we're going to do a demo that shows the new Hylo redesign. Um, so, so it was a for-profit, but through that transition, it became open source and nonprofit. And we manage Hylo as a community-led technology commons. So it's a really, really different way of building technology than almost any other tool you might be interacting with. So we don't have investment, we don't have venture capital, we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. We have a team of 7 core team members right now who are good friends, some of whom have been friends for like over a decade. And we are all just committed to this because it is our purpose and our passion. And we're definitely not here for like the money or just a job or something, although we have managed to pay everyone a living wage for over 5 years, which feels like a huge accomplishment. But our team is committed, and that's what we have that other platforms don't. Um, and Terran Collective, Aaron named, is our LLC, and that is one of the governance bodies that we have where we accept technology contracts. So some of our partners are paying us to work on Hylo and develop it in certain ways. And then sometimes we take contracts from other companies to make ends meet. We've done a lot of work with Holochain lately, along those lines. And then we have a fiscally sponsored nonprofit for Hylo specifically. And our goal is to establish the right kind of corporate structure for Hylo, which still TBD, but we know that it has to enshrine our value to have this as a commons and to incorporate the voices of all of our stakeholders in governance decisions. And that's all of you, everyone using Hylo. So we do that informally at the moment all the time. We take lots of decisions to the community, and we have a lot of conversations with the community around our feature roadmap and testing and feedback. There's even more we can do. We eventually hope to formally exit to community and have this platform just be completely community run. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the shape of Hylo right now. So we're powered by these partnerships and also a little bit by foundations. And our biggest foundation partner is the Novo Foundation. And we are working together specifically to make Hylo an amazing platform for place-based organizing, because both we and Novo really strongly believe that local organizing is the thing that is going to turn the tide right now. We all need to be gathering in place, taking care of our place, and creating local resilience and care in order to create a world that works for all. So if you're ever wondering, like, what is this Hylo thing? Why are we here? Why are we using this platform? It's because those are the things animating this technology. And the values behind a technology really, really matter because um, if you're trying to organize on Facebook, you're going to be facing ads, that your data is being stolen, the time and attention of all the people is being stolen, and that's like working against all of us. So we're trying to create a space that is actually serving and amplifying and like accelerating our work because that is what is needed at this time. So let's do a demo and look at the platform. Many of you might have noticed that Hylo has just radically changed, but
Yes.
all the features you love are still there. We launched our redesign, and so it's sort of been a whole overhaul to the not functionality, but like navigation, like user experience, total redesign. And the goal of all of that has been to make it just even more performant, easy to use, easy to connect with people. We brought chat to the center of the experience because in our work, chat is really where we see a lot of organizing efforts start, like the WhatsApp thread. But then after it grows to more than like 100 people or something, it's just totally nuts. And you need a platform that is a little bit more organized. And so the new Hylo is really meeting that evolutionary need of groups. So you can start with the chat, but then as you start developing your projects, your events, your requests and offers, like all of those things are there for people to organize around and get things done. So do you want to share your screen?
I do.
Yes, and tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
some
I'm a
of the
little
new
bit
stuff.
nervous because this is the very first time I'm going to demo this. So all of the
Oh.
demo scripts that I've had for the last 3 years are going to be reevaluated. Am I in the right window?
No, I think you're sharing your
You're checking out
bottom
your
one.
amazing music taste.
Okay. let's go like this. Right?
I think that's
right. Ta-da!
yes, cool.
Okay. Where do we start here?
Well, so we're looking at the BioFi community. It's got a different look. We're in dark mode. There's now dark and light mode depending on your device settings. And we're looking at the chat. And so the chat right now is the landing view, but the stewards of this group can change that. Tyler and Carla, you can set it to whatever you want. But the default now is the chat. And I just chatted this morning, like, hey, everyone. And so now there's kind of more of an energy of being able to just like check in and just like chit chat with each other. What are you up to? Like, hey guys, check out this link kind of thing. Um, and then on the left, we have the new menu, which is totally customizable by the stewards. So you all can be moving key things up to the top. But what we have is the common views showing all of the um, normal like content types on Hylo. We have a member widget, which is assorted by most recent
It should be now.
people logging
Yeah.
in. Okay. Oh, and you're not an admin, so we can't do the admin stuff.
We can show building Hylo.
Okay.
Yeah. So part of what led to a lot of these changes is just 4 years of listening to the community of people who are organizing, learning what they needed. And one of the themes that came out of this is that every group is unique. This is very surprising. But when you think about it, it's not. It's, groups are organisms. They're alive. The people in them animate their ability to act in the world. And what they're there to do is unique. Who is composing that group is unique. So of course their needs are going to be unique. And while every group's needs are unique, there are common inflection points. For instance, when a group first starts, there's usually just a few people saying, how do we get more people? And so there's like an evolutionary trajectory for every group. And you grow from 1 or 2 to 5 or 6. And then there's kind of an inflection point where you have to grow beyond that, which means you need some systems, some leadership, some tools, a place to gather. And then when you grow from 6 to 30 or 40 or so, then another level of relational and organizational complexity emerges, all the way up till you have communities on Reddit with millions of people. Hylo now, let's actually start with creating a group really quick. One of the first things that we looked at was like, okay, the getting a group started and getting people into the group was taking too long. It felt like a big process was the feedback we heard from people. So we tried to make it very simple and easy now. So we're going to go ahead and create a group. And it's very simple. You don't have to add a banner or an icon. You can just name the group. New group.
It's taken.
Yeah, there we go. And then you jump in. You're in the chat. You can copy the invite link and paste it to a friend. And then people can join the group. And this cuts a process that was about 10 clicks long into 2 clicks. And so that's just the first layer. That's the first evolutionary step, is like making it easy to invite the other person who's going to lead this group with you into communication. And then as you grow, this sidebar becomes valuable real estate. For the first 15 people, all you need is a chat room. But as things get more and more complex, the complexity of the group changes, and you're going to need to direct people to specific things. So we have this very customized, everything is customizable here. You could set this up as a classroom. You could set this up as a project with tasks on the left to complete, or you can keep it as a communal space where you highlight people and have more discussion space. And we really made this menu flexible because we heard from people that the way to organize is going to be different for each group. Some people are just there to chat and they're going to be doing work somewhere else. Some people need to organize an effort. Some people need to teach and share information.
Can we go back to the home chat?
Yes.
And can I say a few things?
Yeah, let's go to building Hylo because that's a little more.
So in addition to this chat experience, all of the post types that have been on Hylo are still here. And the way to create a post is to start a chat, but there's a little drop down and you can click and select those other post types. These are really important in the Hylo context because there's certain types of collaboration that we see leading to successful outcomes. So obviously events is a critical one. Hylo also has projects, discussions, and then one of the most special ways that we want to encourage interaction is requests and offers, which are a great way to create a culture of mutual support, which is so important in the local context. Um, One of the people in our breakout group was mentioning just overcoming the scarcity mindset to get people to come together for change. And a culture of mutual support is really how you get over that. Because once people realize that their needs can be met in community and not simply through the market or the state, that is extremely empowering and exciting. Like, we keep us safe, we take care of each other, we can feed each other. We can do this locally. And so requests and offers are really about that and sharing like, what do I need? What could I use help with? Or like, what do I have to give? Because everyone has needs and everyone has something to give. And then one last thing I want to highlight is the proposals functionality. And we'll kind of, yeah, no, I guess I should just share that right now, which is just that all of this is leading towards in that like evolutionary journey of groups on Hylo, it's leading toward groups being able to organize in more and more complex ways. And some of the most complex things people can do together are make decisions together. And so there's a lot of complexities that Hylo's not going to solve, like the interpersonal, inner work, maturity type issues. But we do have functionality here for people to make decisions together. And that's what the proposals functionality is. And here's an example of that. Um, and so anyone can make a proposal, and it can be like a poll. It can be multiple choice, it can be formal and have like a specific start time and end time, or more like open-ended for your group. But it's a great way to get people invested in your group and in the decisions you make. One of the biggest things for engagement in an online space is that people feel like there's a reason for them to show up. There's something exciting. They have a voice, they have a say in what the group is doing. Um, our attention is split so many ways, and platform fatigue is really, really real. But if you are giving your people a voice and a place to participate in something meaningful that really matters to them, they will show up. Yeah. Um, and I know we have about five more minutes. So I know we're getting to the end of our monologue, and there will be lots of time for questions.
Can I make a request? Can you
Yeah.
all show the map view maybe in the BioFi community of practice? Because we're getting some questions in the chat about location. And
Yeah.
if you want to say anything about a potential bioregional map layer, I know folks would want to hear about that.
Yes, totally. So one very unique thing about Hylo as a social platform is that we have a map. And any content you share on Hylo, you can put the location and then it'll show up on the map automatically. Um, and it's really cool to see the members in this group are all over the world. You don't just have to show the US, you could show somewhere
Yeah,
else.
that's true. Yeah, sorry.
And yes. So in the future, there's going to be more tools for bioregional organizing. Our work with Novo continues, and Some of you I got to talk to in my research phase with bioregional organizers to hear what is really needed in the field among folks doing place-based organizing regarding technology. And we're digesting all of that right now. There's so much. But definitely we're excited to do more with the map, potentially adding different map layers. Adding a bioregional map layer is actually a really tricky one because
Politically fraught.
because it's a whole different paradigm than just showing up and drawing lines on a map, which is the colonial paradigm. And so I'm not even sure if there is a bioregional map or if there is
Well, there are,
there.
but we're not sure if that is authoritative because life doesn't have straight lines in it. And as we've looked at, like, it's the neighborhood problem. My neighborhood is relative to me, and my neighbor's relative, their neighborhood is relative to them.
Mhm.
And that's how life works. And so putting straight lines is hard. And so we've been thinking about organizing, like using the map layers to organize around watersheds. That's something the
Mhm.
landscape does present as definitive boundaries.
Or at least membranes.
Membranes, yes,
Yes.
sorry, not boundaries. Yeah.
But so working on the map is part of what's on deck, just by way of like a little preview for the future for the rest of this year. We also heard that network mapping is really, really critical for organizers, like being able to understand the landscape, but not just in terms of geography, in terms of who are the projects and individuals at play in my area, and how are they connected to each other. So we're definitely going to be thinking about that. Um, we are potentially going to be working with a partner on participatory grant making and funding. Fingers crossed that
Yeah.
one comes through. But if that is the case, then that will kind of extend our proposal functionality so that groups can be collectively allocating a bucket of money.
Yeah.
And that really is going to be super relevant to the BioFi community in particular. Um, One of the ways that a BFF might work is by having participatory budgeting or funding of a common local pool of money and inviting stakeholders to make those decisions about where the funding goes. So stay tuned. And all of these things are things that we share regularly in the Building Hylo community. And of course, I'll be sharing with the BioFi community.
Yeah.
And we're going to have conversations and calls about these ideas, and there will be ample opportunities for more input and feedback.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get started with that work in May and June. So there's lots more to come. And there's lots more to say. But I'm also happy to dig into the chat and answer some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much, Claire and Aaron. Yeah, this is beautiful. Y'all did such a good job on the redesign. I want to give Edward a few minutes to come in and share a little bit about why you co-founded Hylo, what the vision was at that time, how you see it as continuous or evolving, and how it intersects with the resurging work in the bioregional movement and the biofi world that we're seeing right now. And then we'll get into some good Q&A. And there's so much in the chat. So Claire and Aaron, feel free to start digging in there.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, I mean it's an interesting journey. So I would say in 2006 feels so long ago and so recent. Um, I was watching with great interest the rise of traditional social media in the form of Friendster and MySpace and the beginnings of Facebook. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the most powerful technology for human organizing, and all of these people are missing the point of what could be done. And I tried to imagine what a kind of evolved social platform that helped um, individuals, groups, and communities begin to better organize their resources and collaborate more effectively and efficiently. Um, and I didn't really know what to do or how to do it or where to start. And so I sort of thought about it for about 6 years before doing anything, and decided to try to start another company as practice to understand what it means to start a company. Um, and around 2012, I got the courage to try to pull people together and raise funding, and to try to build something like this. And the general principle was just that it was sort of self-evident to me that humans had access in aggregate access to an extraordinary amount of skills, of possibilities, of resources, and we didn't need to always pass things through this very narrow portal of paying each other to do stuff. And what would it mean to make visible or explicit the skills and resources and possibilities and creativity in our communities? At the time, I was also starting Oakland Impact Hub, which was very impactful for me to realize that even in this community center where we were all ostensibly organizing to collaborate, it wasn't really clear who was working on what, who had what skills, who was available to help in the most aligned ways. And so, how do you begin to use this sort of magical space of the cloud to really surface these opportunities for shared endeavor, shared creativity, and shared resources? And that kind of inquiry led on this big journey, and now exemplified by this extraordinary new redesign and the amazing work that Aaron and Claire and Tibet and the other team members have been working on over the past 5 years. Um, and I feel like the spirit of where it began is alive and well, and continuing to be extended and evolved and enlivened. And I don't know. That's one way to phrase it. I think there's and um, I think seeing what has happened, of course, to social media since 2006, and how it has led to you know the destruction and corruption of our our minds and our democracies. I think it was maybe more prescient than I realized to think of this as one of the key leverage points, but maybe um, not quite prescient enough to know how to make it the dominant form of social media. Um, but it's an interesting journey that we all get to be on together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Edward. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think you saw a lot coming that we are experiencing in this moment now. And Hylo is still going and doing beautiful things, and may it strengthen and attract many more communities to use it and strengthen it over time. Um, Thank you so much, Edward, Aaron, and Claire. We're going to move into Q&A now. Thanks already for answering some questions in the chat, and Tyler for answering a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm going to kick us off with a question of my own, and then we invite folks to go ahead and start raising your hands. And if you need to leave at the top of the hour, maybe just throw your question in the chat, and we can probably create a Google Doc where Claire and Aaron can answer the questions that don't get answered while we're here today.
Maybe
Um,
a post on Hylo.
yeah, we'll post
You can do
that
an AMA.
in our Hylo community of practice for sure, and you can post it in Building Hylo as well. So my question is about, yeah, this very exciting and tricky question of bioregional mapping, right? Like we need to give people alternative ways to identify their place, the place that they're living in, the place that they're visiting. And someone in the chat mentioned the One Earth bioregional map. I have found this to be a very helpful tool. And I mentioned in the chat that, there are problems with this map. It's, purely ecological data. There's no cultural input into that. It bisects watersheds in certain places, particularly Northern Africa. The bioregions are kind of these bands. So you're cutting watersheds. So, there are some challenges with that map. And I know my friend Lewis Fox, who lives here in the Bay Area and is running a bioregional explorers club, wanted to create a platform that would allow people to find their bioregional address. And he's like, I just want to name my little club. I want to know like what to call it. And it's a challenge that it's so, tricky to like create an entry point for people to like see their bioregion and come together with people in that space. So I wonder how y'all are thinking about, maybe it's like a hackathon where we like invite people from around the world to come together and like do the best job possible of taking, top-down ecological data like the One Earth map, but also bottom-up data like indigenous territories and other cultural data, and to create a new layer for Hylo, and maybe it's not in all places, but it's in some places, and it's a starting place that we can add to over time. But I'd love to hear just how y'all are thinking about this and how the BioFi community and practice can be in conversation with the Hylo team about this.
Mhm.
You can go first.
Can I? Okay. So we definitely see this idea of place-based groups as this like palimpsest of layers because we're in the Sierra bioregion. Some people call it the Shasta bioregion. It could be called Salmon Nation, and all of those things are true and have value. And on Hylo, if you're a steward of a group, there's actually a place in the settings to draw on the map the shape defining where your group is based.
Hmm.
So any place-based group can do that right now on Hylo. And then when you look at the map, you'll see the polygon for your group. And the very next step with that for us, as part of our next phase of bioregional tools, is that we're going to start recommending nearby groups to folks when they create their account or when they're logging in. We can just say like, hey, here's the 5 most active groups near you. And some of those might be explicitly bioregional organizing. Some of them might just be like mutual aid or, knitting club, whatever it is. But that's how we are really looking at this. Like not trying to be like the deciders of what is the bioregion, but just showing people what is alive near them.
The map is not the territory. It creates all sorts of problems. When we say it's the Gulf of America instead of the Gulf of Mexico, we're projecting our culture onto the landscape. And so what we've realized is that there's really two types of bioregional groups. There's the life places that have existed since time immemorial, and then there's the human cultural representations of what is happening. And those need two different sets of tools. In other words, Cascadia, Salmon Nation, all of these different bioregional organizing communities have different ideas of who they are and who they're serving, and they need their own group and their own map so that they can communicate and organize. That's different than a global map that offers like the One Earth perspective. And both of these are necessary components to help people, as you were saying, Samantha, see an entry point into their landscape. But they're kind of in some ways not opposing each other, but just there's conflicting information about where I am. If I'm like, am I in Salmon Nation or am I in Shasta? Am I in the Sierra Nevada foothills? I'm in the Weber Creek watershed. Like, what is my local? and we don't have the answers to that, like Claire's saying. We don't want to be the ones to say this is the Gulf of America. And in fact, that is up to local communities to understand where they are, what their name is, what their identity is, what their values are.
Mm.
But we do want to provide more information. We already have, for instance, the native languages map. We have, or native territories, but it's the language territories for the most part. And so we are very interested in that, but we're also very cautious to not project colonial memes when these organizing, like the capacity for organizing actually needs to be supported rather than here's what to call this place.
Dictated.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful. Thank you both. Tyler, over to you to facilitate Q&A.
Sure. Um, I just want to offer an invitation for those who are holding questions. Maybe you've already raised your hand, you're thinking about it, to just ground in the preciousness of this chance we have with Aaron and Claire to talk about the technology and Edward. And if there's kind of theoretical questions around bioregional organizing more broadly, that we save those for other spaces. But just with that said, I'm going to go in order that I see on my screen, and it's to you, Grace, and then Braden, and then Gmo, and then Dee Dee, and Michael. We'll see if we get that far.
Great, thanks. So I'll try to be short. Um, but yeah, the first thing I want to say is congratulations. I've been following this project for a long time, and I'm profoundly moved by all of the ways in which for years you've been working on this and where you are today. And I don't take it for granted. And this work is really a profound piece of work. So thank you, all of you. Just to give a little introduction of where I am, I've just taken on working on systems for the Design School for Regenerating the Earth. And I've been thinking a lot about governance and, one of the things and I've come from the DAO space. And so the first thing I'd like to is an invitation to discuss this more deeply is around the proposals and the problems that have come from co-budgeting, because there's a real difference between sitting together around a budget and around some food that really doesn't come out in chat. Like as soon as you start having offline chat, like that depth of like how people are speaking and what their needs really are and who's being silent because they're just too, all that disappears. And so I feel the whole DAO space has become very adversarial and the quieter voices have just disappeared. And so that's an invitation to have a deeper discussion as somebody like who's really been in that space for a while, not to have it here. Right. And I'd love to talk to you. And also within that, I personally find chat like this is the asynchronous way of speaking really difficult. Like, because if somebody pauses, it means something in conversation, but it doesn't mean anything when you're in asynchronous chat. And so I'd like to have that conversation with you guys outside, like in a verbal conversation. So it's the invitation. And the question is really about APIs. I know it's like tech terms, but what I'm seeing as part of my role is not to impose on any group or set of groups or bioregions a technology where everybody would onboard onto, but to really create the interoperational capabilities, because somebody there's a group on, on whatever Mattermost, and there's a group on Hylo, and there's a group using some kind of regional currency, and then there's a group using some other kind of trust network. But I see this as really crucial for us in dealing with one another is this interoperability and the ability to integrate other types of systems. And so I wanted to ask, my question is, how are you seeing interoperability and the ability to, for multiple groups to use multiple platforms and yet still be part of this bioregionalism or whatever it is that we're creating, Game B, however you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Interoperability is a core design principle for us. We do have an API, and for any groups that are curious about integrating, we can connect you with our director of technology and he can set you up with a key. But we are super into that, and that director of technology, Tibet, is also one of the leaders of the Collaborative Technology Alliance, which was founded by Edward back in the day. And there's still a whole bunch of amazing collaboration platforms in that group that are working together to address these challenges. And maybe you're a part of it already, Grace. But for anyone else who doesn't know, they are making progress on creating ways for all of these platforms that are open and values aligned to be integrating with each other. We're definitely not trying to enclose groups or create like a walled garden or whatever. Hylo is really like the opposite of that. So we would love to get to a place where groups can be forming on whatever platform is right for them.
Yeah.
And then content and information and people and relationships can be flowing to wherever the conversation is happening. And then individuals can be engaging from whatever technology interface is easiest for them. We're 100% into that, and that is the direction that we hope to go. Yeah.
I see more questions. I didn't see who was next.
I,
Hi.
I
Uh,
believe Braden, yeah. Braden, and then Gmo, and Dee Dee, and then Michael.
I was gonna sort of ask about the um sort of the scaling and like like sort of the fractaling function, I guess. Like how you said that there's a way to like include like let's say you have a locality group that's in a bigger bioregional group, and then there's like overlaps between those groups, and like is there a function by which to like let's say people are like, oh, like include our locality group into this pre-existing bioregional group. Is there a way to sort of like do that sort of like um
Yeah, 100%.
layering?
You can form parent-child relationships between groups. Every group can have a location or a polygon. And the combination of those two things means that you have a very flexible dynamic set of options, like many, many different options of configuration. The thing that we're working on that is not quite there yet is making that when you set a location, recommending that you do the next step. Uh, it's not super intuitive, or it's not happening at the moment that you're doing it. It's like you have to go into the settings and do it yourself. Um, and there's a layer that Claire spoke to just a moment ago, which is that once we have, maybe later this year, actually, we're hoping that we already have a pretty decent database of place-based groups, people or groups with locations or polygons, and connecting just people who sign up or are already on Hylo with those groups. That's the next step. And if you configure the relationships and the boundaries right, people can flow up to flow up through the groups because they see what group they're in, they see what group it's a child of. They're allowed to join that group because it's a child group. And yeah, so hopefully a lot of the infrastructure that we built will just work right when we turn on the recommendations, and people will experience like new faces and yeah, new interest, organic interest.
And just sort of like I guess a follow-up like that's sort of similar to what Grace was asking about. But like I know you have the sort of collaborative technology, like interoperability group. Have you thought about like sort of using like a kind of how like the Fediverse works? Is that something that like there's like interoperability, but it's like I'm not a tech person, so I feel like maybe that's a stupid question, but like is that sort of what you guys are talking about or?
Yep. I mean, so Hylo, because of the choices around power that we've made, there's not really any intellectual property to be bought by somebody like a very rich billionaire. Can't just buy Hylo. The last thing that is kind of somebody has keys for, we have keys for, is the database. And the Fediverse is really an answer to that problem, like of who holds the keys. And a Fediverse means that there's a model for Hylo that we could go in this direction. We've talked about it. We don't know if it's the right direction, but like you spin up your own server, you start your own Hylo, it connects to this Hylo, and we share data. That is definitely one way to solve this problem. And it's a problem that we are deeply interested in solving. And we've mainly been interested in the technology called holochain as a solution to a path to a solution, because it is a total reconceptualization of what a server is, what a user is, and it's more in line with, we think, biological and living systems values. And that technology is maturing at a much more rapid pace in the last year, which is really exciting. So hopefully we solve this problem soon, but it is definitely one of the power dilemmas that hangs over every tech platform. Basically, as long as somebody has those keys, there's something can go wrong. Yeah.
Right. Or if the platform doesn't have good values, then they take that richness of everyone's data and they sell it to the
Yeah.
highest bidder, which
Yeah.
we're never going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for those great questions, Braden. Gmo, over to you.
Hey, congrats on all the updates. This is super exciting. Some of my initial question was also around interoperability, and some of that has been answered. But I am curious if a similar discussion is happening more around the data standards. And I imagine so, but I'm curious at like what level of detail and resolution is your vision for Hylo? Like at what is the overlap between like a social media alternative and like a deeply scientific or academic platform? Um, uh, for context, we're building Sylvie, which is a reforestation stack. We'd be very interested in interoperating with Hylo around things like tree bounties or local regenerative activities. And yeah, very curious to connect with the team to explore sort of that overlapping surface area. Thank you.
100%. I can try.
Sure.
Well, Hylo is, we don't really use the word social media to describe Hylo because we think social media is kind of a false premise. It comes from, different social medias are recapitulating different media environments. Like Instagram's kind of like a magazine, Facebook's kind of like a yearbook. But these experiences that the tech platforms draw different communities and populations into to scroll. They call it a feed because you're basically just going and to get dopamine. We don't think that's the purpose of technology. We don't think that's the role of technology in society. We don't think these phones were invented for us to waste time on. We think that social technology is to coordinate an action, and specifically so that people connect, build trust and relationship, find belonging, discover their local environment. It's not just coordination in general. We're not like more activity is better. We really want people to reweave the fabric of life. And social media doesn't do that. It actually erodes the fabric of life. So we're much more interested in what the types of things you're doing as types of activities rather than go be entertained as a group. No, it's like, let's go restore the eroding hillside over here, or start a farmer's market, or other forms of generating community, belonging, trust, relationship, because we think those are the kind of generator functions that will produce more healthy outcomes at the social and societal level.
Apologies for the analogy there. I 100% agree with your definition of what Hylo is doing at the coordination level. Yeah, so I definitely take the social media term back.
Oh, no, yeah, you're doing great. I was just explaining the distinction that we make internally. Yeah.
100%. Could you just maybe point to any documentation resources or person that I could reach out to maybe explore some of the discussions around data or tech APIs, etc.? That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that will be a Tibet thing.
Yeah, I'll put his email address right here.
Yeah, or you can DM him
on Hylo.
On Hylo. But yeah, I think standards has been part of the conversation in the Collaborative Technology Alliance. And I think where that would start is with having shared standards around like data standards around like the structure of a group and being able to share group data and post data across these platforms. But I think we're interested in whatever y'all are interested in.
Yeah.
So if there's an integration that would bring richness to what you're trying to do in the world, we're interested in talking about it and figuring out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimo. Great question. Michael, over to you, and then Lawrence.
Super excited, guys. Well done. I've been a big Hylo fan for a long time, and it was great to see your announcement recently. Great also to see the maturity, not only in the relationships that you're forming, but seeing Edward being here and supporting it. I know Edward's got a lot on his plate, so I'm just loving the energy, and it's great to see. My question has to do with much longer term planning. So this is just to plant a seed. And for context, we're going through a transition, and two major transitions are one around human coordination, which obviously you know about, and the second is around the notion of from an extractive economy into a regenerative economy. Those two transitions are going to be very interesting in the corporate space. And my sort of tagline is building bridges between the boardroom and bioregions. The reason I mention that as context is at some point, and this is going to be in the future, it's not burning issue now, but a corporate is going to look on a map for a physical location of a bioregion, and you've discussed the challenges around mapping. But once they find, let's say there's a list of 5 bioregional initiatives close to them, they then want to be able to select from those 5 based on a general feel of the level of governance within that group. It could be something as simple as just the number of people in the group, the number of proposals that are passed or submitted and passed, some other metrics around just giving them a quick visual snapshot. Okay, this one's at the bottom of the list for XYZ reason, and we want to go and talk to this one at the top of the list. This is before getting to know the group. It's just another way of not only saying geographically they're here, but also getting a sense of, well, how organized is this group and how much activity? I'm sure you know there are quite a few Hylo groups that are completely inactive, sadly. So just planting a seed, you don't even need to comment on this, hopefully putting it on your roadmap for 5 years' time from now. But great job, guys. We're super excited about what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and just a quick response, like some of the metrics you mentioned will be pretty easy to make visible, like how many proposals are happening, how many projects. And then other forms of distributed governance will be more challenging, and we're planning ahead for that. Like, what happens when we do have a huge bioregional group that maybe doesn't have some organization stewarding it, but is more just distributed. How can we create a space where stewards can rise to the top through their relationships and the trust people have in them, and be kind of like elected based on the trust of the community. So right now on Hylo, the stewards are the people who have founded the group and then have been designated by the founders. And we have different roles and responsibilities that can be assigned. Those things can be distributed, but it still is distributed by like the original founder of the group. So there's that asymmetry that on other platforms can create like a digital fiefdom where there's like this all-powerful moderator. And we work on dismantling that tendency through Hylo, but there's still some aspects of it.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to create groups in the future that are not necessarily like founded by someone who then becomes the all-powerful moderator, but where the leadership and the authority is distributed and
It
emerges through the trust people have in the other individuals in the group. And then that will be a really strong signal for these boardrooms to see like, oh, like the Great Plains bioregion has actually like elected their leaders and here they are, and you could have a conversation with them.
Yep.
Thanks, Michael and Claire. I'm going to go to Dee Dee and then over to you, Lawrence.
Yeah, a couple of suggested confluences. The Soil Carbon Coalition, which not now is an outdated name, but Peter Donovan has created something called Soil Health app that is a monitoring app, and I think that would be really interesting to see how, like, what change is actually happening in infiltration rates and biodiversity, et cetera, that people could, and it's designed for groups, not for individuals. And it's designed for for regional groups or local groups. So I'll put my email in the chat if you want me to connect you. Um, I think that could be a really cool way to take this onto the ground, and get people out in the land actually observing and monitoring and testing change rather than making a lot of assumptions and models and, keeping it just in the talk realm. So, so that's one thing. I have just a very practical question myself that I teach and also have kind of a community that people pay various amounts to just participate in over time. Is this so I have a question of like, if I create a group, can it be a sort of a private group in that sense that other people can't see and join unless they're invited in? But also, is there any way to tie in like course fees or donations or that kind of thing into the join?
That's something that we want to integrate possibly later this year, like the ability for a group to have tuition or dues and to start collect money from its members to use for a common purpose. But not right now, although I know some people that have done workarounds. But I also want to let you know that one of the next things we're working on is courses and having native course technology in Hylo in a simple way. We're doing this through our partnership with Crew for All, which is another nonprofit technology that's really amazing. And so that's going to be out in May, is the ability for any group on Hylo to have tracks that are part of the group. And those can be thought of as educational, like a learning experience, or like an organizing guide. Like, here's how you create a BFF. And then it's like the step-by-step content on how to do a certain thing. So they're both learning oriented as well as action oriented.
Great. And I just wanted to also reiterate what I heard, I think the first person who commented about the difference between chat. I've seen the same thing that, when I create a WhatsApp group for class or something, it just deteriorates so fast. And so, very differently. I feel like Zoom is okay. We can kind of stay human here, but once we shift into chat, it's really different. So yeah, an ongoing question, but really appreciating what you're doing.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dee Dee. Lawrence, last question.
Yeah, thank you. So good to be here. So good to see a lot of you for the first time in a while. Thank you all for beautiful work. Quick, two quick questions. One is, and this is my naivete about the platform and just missing the first hour, so apologies if you shared this already, but can someone select a place-based group, a group with boundary attached to it? Can they select that as their home bioregion? Because I think that becomes, for place-based work, that becomes sort of a linchpin for the governance stuff. If we're going to be looking at voting, can someone really claim two homes, in two separate watersheds? So there's a kind of question there that I think naturally arises that to put on the roadmap as far as, and I always took inspiration from Nextdoor. When they first started, they sent out postcards to verify physical address, which I'm not saying you need to do, but it was just a very interesting way around just making sure somebody actually was where they said they were, which becomes important if we're really going to be doing place-based decision making of any kind of real heft. So that's the first question, and you can just kind of, if there's an answer, fine. The second question would be any tips you have about how to use Hylo for event organizing, because myself and a few others are gearing up for a bioregional regeneration unconference May 3rd in Oakland for Bay Area, but the broader Bay Delta bioregion. Yeah, Tracy and Ajay and a few others. So how can we use that? How can we leverage Hylo before, during, and after to really make sure that the conversations that happen while we're together, are we're prepared for it, and that we're actually following up afterwards to keep the momentum moving?
Yes, awesome. I love how you're thinking about like how do we actually verify where people are and make sure that votes are being counted in an equitable way. We don't have a plan for that yet.
Well, we've talked a lot about it. Yeah, but it's not a simple thing
No, not at all.
as you pointed out. And that's maybe the where we're at is just like, okay, many bioregions can claim me as a constituent, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm in Salmon Nation and Shasta and maybe even the Bay Delta bioregion. I don't know if it goes all the way up to my creek, but like the water flows to you. And so it would be reasonable for you to claim me as a constituent. And but then there's the issue of like, where am I actually?
Yeah.
And we do have the phone is always reporting its location if we get permission. There's a solution there, which is like this person is here half the time or here all the time. There are ways to do it, but then that's tricky too, because people might be on vacation or visiting, and we want people to be able to find the local bioregion that they're in, even if they're just visiting. So
Yeah, I think it speaks to the nomenclature of the kind of like the organization, the fractal organization, and that's so emergent right now. But like, I really appreciate like Cascadia work being done up there to do the mapping. So, and I'm realizing even with like Ajay's question about sort of how to create a child group off the Bay Delta bioregion, having an intentional conversation about what those subunits look like, and at least as a starting point, because this is all kind of moving targets, but and emerging. But cool. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the thought.
Well, let me talk about how to do your event on Hylo, which it's a great example of how to use Hylo for a local thing. Lots of people have used Hylo for events like conferences, unconferences. So you're going to want to create a group. And at first, you would just put your organizers and stakeholders in the group, and you could start to have these conversations in that place, like what is most important for us to cover, what's everyone's ideas about content or structure, and start these discussions. If you're having planning calls, you can make an event for each planning call, and then you could be using the proposals feature for decision making. Like, hey, here are the 5 venues that we're trying to decide between. Let's make a vote on that, and people can comment, and we can try to get some data on how everyone's feeling. And again, like it's not the beginning and the end of the organizing. You're obviously going to be having your in-person conversations and your Zoom conversations, but it is a place where all of that can be organized in a way that's really accessible versus like a super long, complex email thread that's impossible to follow. And then when you're starting to promote the event, promote the link to the group, and anywhere you're talking about it, get the link out there so that beforehand everyone can be joining, and then during everyone can be joining, and it can be completely integrated with the live event. One thing I would recommend is like as really salient conversations emerge, someone's noting those and then creating the post on Hylo to continue the conversation. Whereas people are sharing resources, make sure that those get documented. As different requests and offers emerge from those conversations, put those in the online space too, so that there's a record of that. And then going forward, like maybe in your little breakout group of 5, someone wasn't able to meet a request, but in the 100 people who showed up for the event, there are a bunch of people that can meet that request. So like just like getting the good juice out there so that people can be, there's more opportunity for people to be meeting each other and then carrying those conversations forward.
Excited. Thank you.
That's what I would do. And we can talk more.
Cool.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Aaron and Claire. Thank you, Edward. Can we get everyone to come off mute and just shower this team with some love and some jazz hands for all this incredible work?
Amazing work, y'all. Thank you for being with
Thank
us.
you so much.
Wondrous.
Good job, guys.